Ever feel like you're trying to herd cats when you're working on a big project? I mean, really herding cats.
Oh, yeah.
Like trying to get government agencies and businesses and citizen groups all going in the same direction.
Yeah.
That's the challenge of multi-actor governance.
Yeah.
And frankly, it can be a mess.
Oh, it's fascinating, isn't it? It's those situations where there's no clear boss,
Yeah.
no single person calling the shots.
Right.
Instead, you've got all these different groups with their own goals and ideas
Right.
trying to somehow work together.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We've got this academic article.
Right.
It's called A Relational Approach to Leadership for Multi-Actor Governance.
Okay.
A bit of a mouthful, I know.
Yeah.
But it's got some really insightful stuff about how leadership works in these chaotic, collaborative environments.
The article makes a really important point right off the bat.
Okay.
Those traditional leadership theories,
Yeah.
the kind that focus on individual leaders and their styles, they just don't quite cut it in these situations.
It's like trying to use a hammer to fix a computer.
Yeah.
The wrong tool for the job. So what does work?
Well, the article suggests we need to shift our focus
Okay.
from individual leaders to understanding how leadership emerges from the relationships between the actors.
Okay, so it's less about who's in charge.
Right.
And more about how everyone interacts. I think I'm starting to get it.
Exactly. Think about it. You approach a work project differently than you would a family decision.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Your motivations and your strategies, they kind of change depending on the relationships involved.
That's so true. Like with my family, it's all about compromise and making sure that everyone feels heard.
Yeah.
But at work, it's more about hitting deadlines and achieving specific goals.
And those different approaches are what the article calls transactional and transformational leadership.
Okay.
In a transactional approach, everyone's focused on what they're getting out of the deal,
Right.
like a business transaction.
So in our herding cats scenario, that would be like the company getting the research they need, the researcher getting funding,
Yep,
and the government agency getting a successful project under their belt.
precisely. But then there's transformational leadership,
Okay.
which is less about individual benefit
Okay.
and more about a shared vision for a larger change.
Okay, so imagine if everyone involved in this project started thinking about a bigger goal, like creating a more sustainable future for everyone.
Exactly. That shared vision can be incredibly powerful and motivating people to work together.
Yeah.
Even if they have different starting points.
So in this article, they actually use a really interesting case study to illustrate all of this.
Oh, yeah.
Landfill mining.
Okay. Yeah.
That idea of going back to old landfills and extracting valuable materials.
It's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Because you've got the company that owns the landfill.
Right.
You've got researchers figuring out the best techniques.
Uh-huh.
You've got government agencies setting regulations.
Right.
And, of course, the local community.
Yeah.
Who might have concerns about the environmental impact?
Right. A whole bunch of cats to herd.
A whole bunch of cats.
And the article argues that to navigate this complexity, we need a new way of thinking about leadership.
Wow.
They introduced this idea called complexity leadership theory, or CLT.
CLT is really interesting because it moves away from the idea of a single heroic leader
Right.
and instead identifies 3 different leadership functions that need to work together.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
The first function is administrative leadership.
Yeah.
This is what we typically think of as traditional leadership.
Okay.
Planning, coordinating, setting deadlines, that kind of thing.
So in the landfill mining case, that would be like the company setting up the project, securing funding, and creating a structure for everyone to work together.
Exactly. And it would also involve the government agencies adapting policies and regulations to support the initiative. It's about laying the groundwork for collaboration.
Makes sense. But there's got to be more to it than just administration, right? Especially in a situation as complex as this.
Absolutely. And that's where the second function comes in.
Okay.
Adaptive leadership.
Okay.
This is about responding to challenges in creative and innovative ways, learning as you go, and being willing to change course when needed.
So this is where things get a bit more messy and unpredictable.
Exactly. In the landfill mining case, adaptive leadership would be the researchers coming together from different disciplines, sharing their knowledge, challenging each other's assumptions, and maybe even coming up with solutions that no one had thought of before.
And I bet the local community plays a role here too, right? Like if they voice concerns about the project, that could force everyone to rethink their approach.
Precisely. Adaptive leadership can come from anyone, anywhere in the system.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being responsive to the situation and willing to adapt.
Okay. So we've got administrative leadership setting the stage and adaptive leadership shaking things up.
Yeah.
What's the third piece of the puzzle?
The third function is called enabling leadership.
Okay.
This is the glue that holds everything together. It's about connecting the administrative and adaptive functions, making sure everyone feels heard, and keeping the project moving forward.
So like a facilitator or a mediator, someone who can build bridges between different groups and keep the lines of communication open.
Exactly.
Hmm.
In the landfill mining case, this might be a project coordinator who connects the scientists with the policymakers, makes sure the community's concerns are addressed, and generally keeps everyone on the same page.
This is all starting to make so much sense. It's not about one person being the leader.
Right.
It's about recognizing that different people can step up and lead in different ways, depending on the situation.
And that's a key insight from complexity leadership theory. Leadership becomes a team sport with everyone playing a role in achieving a shared goal.
So we've got these three leadership functions, administrative, adaptive, and enabling, all working together to make multi-actor governance actually work. But how does this apply to our listener? What if they're not involved in something as complex as landfill mining?
Well, the beauty of these concepts is that they can be applied to all sorts of situations, whether it's a community project, a workplace initiative, or even just navigating family dynamics.
So even if you're not literally herding cats, understanding these leadership dynamics can help you be a more effective collaborator in any situation.
Exactly. Because ultimately it's about recognizing that we can all contribute to leadership, even in small ways. And by understanding how these different leadership functions work together, we can make a real difference in the world.
Okay, so we've been talking about these different leadership functions,
Right.
Administrative, adaptive, and enabling, and how they all work together.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see how they actually play out in a real-world example.
Okay,
Let's go back to that landfill mining project for a minute.
sure. Let's start with administrative leadership.
Okay.
In that case, it was all about setting the stage for collaboration.
Right.
The company took the lead, establishing the project, securing funding, creating a structure for everyone to work together. They even handpicked a team of scientists and experts
Okay.
who aligned with their vision.
But it wasn't just the company calling all the shots, right? The waste agency also had a big role to play.
Absolutely. The waste agency used their authority
Right.
to adapt policies and regulations,
Okay.
creating a more favorable environment for the project. It's a good reminder that administrative leadership can come from different places,
Yeah.
not just the organization with the most money or the biggest name.
So they laid the groundwork, but then things got a bit more interesting with adaptive leadership, right?
Definitely. This is where we see the real magic of collaboration.
Okay.
Researchers from different disciplines came together, shared their knowledge, challenged each other's assumptions. And the article highlights how this interaction led to new insights
Right.
and innovative solutions that wouldn't have been possible if they worked in isolation.
It's like that saying, two heads are better than one.
Mhm.
But in this case, it's more like a dozen brilliant minds all working together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the scientists. The local community also played a crucial role in adaptive leadership
Oh, right.
by voicing their concerns about potential health and safety risks.
Okay.
They pushed everyone to think more critically about the project's impact and come up with better solutions.
It's a great example of how adaptive leadership can emerge from unexpected places
Right.
and challenge the status quo, which
Yeah.
is so important in complex situations like this. But let's not forget about the glue that holds it all together,
Yeah.
enabling leadership.
Ah, yes. The unsung heroes. The article highlighted the research coordinator's role
Okay.
in connecting different networks and facilitating dialogue between the scientists, policymakers, and the community.
I can imagine that takes a lot of skill, especially when you're dealing with people who might have very different perspectives and priorities.
It does. And what's really interesting is that this enabling leadership wasn't just about formal meetings and presentations.
Right.
It also involved informal conversations, building trust,
Uh-huh.
and establishing personal relationships between key actors.
So it's not just about managing tasks and information.
Right.
It's about creating a culture of collaboration where everyone feels valued and respected.
Precisely. It's about fostering a sense of shared purpose and making sure everyone feels like they're part of the team.
Huh.
And remember those transactional and transformational approaches we talked about earlier?
Yes.
Well, effective enabling leadership often requires navigating both of those.
You mean appealing to people's self-interest while also inspiring them with a larger vision?
Exactly. The research coordinator had to make sure that everyone felt like they were getting something out of the project, the transactional part,
Okay.
while also keeping them focused on the ultimate goal of sustainable materials management, the transformational part.
Right.
It's a delicate balancing act.
So we've seen how administrative leadership, adaptive leadership, and enabling leadership all played a role in making this landfill mining project a success. But let's be honest, not every project involves something as complex as digging up old trash.
Right.
How can our listener apply these concepts to their own lives, even if they're not dealing with something on that scale?
That's a great question. The key takeaway here is that these leadership dynamics can be found in all sorts of situations. Think about your own workplace, for example. Are there projects where you need to collaborate with people from different departments or teams?
Or even think about a community project.
Right.
Like organizing a neighborhood cleanup or advocating for a new park.
Yeah.
You've got different people with different skills and interests who need to come together to make it happen.
Exactly. And in those situations, it's helpful to think about which leadership functions are needed and who might be best suited to fill them. It's not about waiting for someone to appoint you the leader.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we can all contribute to leadership, even in small ways.
So maybe you're the person who's really good at organizing and planning. That's your administrative leadership strength.
Right.
Or maybe you're the one who's always coming up with creative solutions to problems. That's adaptive leadership in action.
And if you're someone who's great at bringing people together and facilitating communication, well, that's your enabling leadership shining through.
I love that. It's about recognizing your own strengths and how you can use them to contribute to a shared goal. But there's another important aspect of multi-actor governance that we haven't talked about yet.
Okay.
Power dynamics.
Oh, yes. That's a crucial point. We've been talking about all these different actors working together.
Right.
But we haven't really delved into how their relative power and influence might shape the collaboration.
Because let's face it, not everyone comes to the table with the same level of authority or resources.
Exactly. And those imbalances can significantly impact the effectiveness of collaborative efforts. For example, in the landfill mining case, the company clearly held a significant amount of power.
Right.
Due to their ownership of the landfill and their financial resources.
That power undoubtedly shaped the dynamics of the project, even if it wasn't always explicitly acknowledged.
And the waste agency, while not directly involved in the project, also wielded considerable power through their regulatory authority. Their decision to support or oppose the project could make or break the whole thing.
And even the local community, despite not having the same formal power as the company or the government, could still exert influence. Through public pressure or even legal action. They had a voice and they weren't afraid to use it.
So as we think about the broader implications of multi-actor governance, it's essential to acknowledge and address these power dynamics. Because if certain voices are consistently marginalized or excluded, the potential for truly collaborative and innovative solutions will be severely limited.
It's like trying to build a house with only half the materials. It's just not going to be as strong or as stable. You need everyone's input and perspective to create something truly remarkable.
Precisely. And that brings us to a question for you, our listener. How do you see power dynamics playing out in your own experiences with multi-actor governance? Are there groups or individuals whose voices are not being heard?
Are there imbalances in resources or influence that are hindering collaboration? And most importantly, what steps can be taken to create a more equitable and inclusive process?
These are critical questions to grapple with as we strive to build more effective and sustainable solutions to the complex challenges we face.
Because ultimately, the success of multi-actor governance depends on creating a space where all voices can be heard. And where power is shared in a way that benefits the collective good.
It's about recognizing that everyone has something valuable to contribute, regardless of their title, their background, or their level of influence. And when we can tap into that collective wisdom, that's when we can truly unlock the potential of multi-actor governance.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, remember that leadership in these complex collaborative environments is not about one person calling all the shots. It's about recognizing the different roles that people can play and creating a space where everyone can contribute their unique talents and perspectives.
And it's about being mindful of power dynamics and working to create a more equitable and inclusive process. Because when we can do that, we could achieve truly remarkable things together.
You know, it's really inspiring to think about how these concepts of multi-actor governance and shared leadership can actually make a difference in the real world.
It is. But the article also raises some important questions
Oh,
about the long-term sustainability of these collaborative efforts.
that's right. It's one thing to get everyone excited and working together initially, but how do you keep that momentum going over time, especially when real change takes time? And there are bound to be setbacks along the way.
That's the challenge, isn't it? It's easy to fall back into old patterns
Right.
of working in silos, particularly when things get tough or disagreements arise.
It's like starting a new diet or exercise routine.
Oh, yeah.
The first few weeks are full of motivation, but then life gets in the way, and it's easy to slip back into old habits.
That's a great analogy. And that's why it's so important to build mechanisms for ongoing learning and adaptation
Okay.
into the very fabric of these multi-actor governance initiatives.
So it's not just about solving a specific problem.
Right.
It's about creating a system that can continuously learn and evolve as new challenges emerge.
Exactly. Let's go back to that landfill mining case for a moment.
Okay.
What happens after the initial research project is completed? How do they ensure that the knowledge and relationships that were built during that process continue to be leveraged?
That's a great question. Maybe it's about creating a platform for ongoing dialogue between the different stakeholders so they can continue sharing ideas and best practices.
Or establishing a formal structure
Right.
for documenting lessons learned and making that information accessible to others working in similar fields.
Perhaps it's even about creating a revolving fund to support future collaborative projects in the field of sustainable materials management.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
The point is that sustaining multi-actor governance requires ongoing effort
Yeah.
and a commitment to constantly learning and adapting.
And it also requires a recognition that those power dynamics we talked about earlier
Yes.
can shift over time.
That's right. New players might emerge.
Yeah.
Existing alliances could fracture.
Right.
And the balance of influence might tip in unexpected directions.
Uh-huh.
So it's not enough to just address power imbalances at the outset of an initiative.
Okay.
You need to be constantly vigilant and willing to adjust the process as needed to ensure that everyone continues to have a voice at the table.
It's like tending a garden.
Yes.
You can't just plant the seeds and walk away. You
Right.
need to water them, weed them,
I agree.
and make adjustments as the plants grow and the seasons change.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And ultimately, the goal of multi-actor governance isn't just to solve a specific problem. It's to create a more equitable and sustainable way of working together, one that can adapt to the ever-changing complexities of our world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of multi-actor governance,
Okay.
we want to leave you with this thought. The world is full of complex challenges
It is.
that demand collaborative solutions.
And while navigating those challenges can be daunting, it also presents an incredible opportunity
Yeah.
to break down silos, forge new connections, and tap into the collective wisdom of diverse perspectives.
It's an opportunity to create a future where leadership isn't about hierarchy or control,
Right.
but about empowering individuals and communities to work together towards a common good.
Remember, we can all contribute to building that future, even in small ways.
Yes.
So as you go about your day, think about the ways you can apply these concepts
Oh.
of shared leadership collaboration and mindful awareness of power dynamics.
Because the challenges we face may be complex, but by working together and embracing the power of multi-actor governance, we can create a brighter, more sustainable future for everyone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll see you next time. Ready to explore another fascinating corner of the world of knowledge?